All right, it is time for another episode of This, That,
and the other.
I'm Joey.
I'm Ian.
And I'll tell you, right now, I am pretty fucking disappointed, man. They did it again. The Chiefs beat the Bills. The Chiefs go on to another fucking Super Bowl. Happens all the goddamn time. Every year. This year, I specifically thought that the Falcons could do it. I was very excited. Started off on a hot streak. Got Kirk Cousins. He was moving and grooving. Then all of a sudden, he shits the bed. Falcon season is over. Don't make the playoffs. So I do what I do every year, and I switched to being a Bills fan in the offseason. I love the Bills. I love Josh Allen. I love Matt Hollins. I love Matt Milano. I love I always root for them. And every single time they make it that close to the Super Bowl, they lose to the Chiefs. And I'm sick and goddamn tired of seeing. And it's not that I have anything personal against the Chiefs. I think everybody on the Chiefs is great. I think they're great athletes. I think they're good at what they do. Great program, great coaching, blah, blah, blah. I'm just fucking sick of it. It's like Tom Brady and the Patriots all over again. I would like to see somebody else make it. And I know I'm speaking a foreign language to you, but I had to get it out.
So the Chiefs won, I guess.
Yes, the Chiefs won. Chiefs
Sick.
won. So it's going to be the Chiefs and the Eagles in the Super Bowl this year, much like how it was the Chiefs and Eagles when we were on vacation a couple of years ago.
Right. Okay, so, like, I guess the real question, like, who cares about the game, but, like, was Taylor Swift there?
Of course Taylor Swift was there. She was always there.
Yeah.
Of course she was there.
Nice.
You got sick of her. You see her every 30 seconds. They care more about Taylor Swift than they do in the fucking game, dude. Of course she was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I got to do something to take my mind off of football because I'm already enraged about that. So.
Well, I mean, so, like, do you got any predictions for the Super Bowl? I mean, I don't really know what I'm talking about.
I mean, it's
Let's
an
put
easy
that
prediction.
out there,
The Chiefs are going to win. Like
you're calling that now?
Yeah, the Chiefs are going to win. It's going to happen again because there's a lot of things that are going into it. That, like Pat Mahomes is a monster. He's a beast, and he really is a once in a lifetime talent. You're never going to see a quarterback like him again for a long time, if ever again. And I think he just made. I think he's one of 3 quarterbacks to go to the Super Bowl 5 times, and he's not even 30 years old yet. I don't think. Or he might be 30, but no, he's already gone to the Super Bowl 5 times, like he's you don't see talent like this all the time. Yeah, it's fucking amazing. It really is. I'm just sick of it. I want to see somebody else, goddammit.
Yeah, I've always thought, I remember watching the game last year with our producer Tyler, and I just remember, like, his voice whenever he would get on the microphone, I would always just start, like, kind of cracking up because his voice, like, Patrick Mahomes.
No, you don't expect it coming out.
I'm glad we won.
It's always funny who sounds like a good old boy all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's crazy. You just don't expect it. Like, the first time I ever heard it, I was just like, no way, that's that dude talking. You're serious?
Yeah. But I mean, I guess congratulations to Chiefs fans. If I was a Chiefs fan, I would love it, but I'm not. So fuck them and fuck Pat Mahomes. But anyway, no. In all sincerity, Pat Mahomes, congratulations. Like, what an amazing
you can't
player.
deny the fact
what an
that
amazing
he is.
Football player.
Exactly.
I would just I would like to see the Bills do it. As much as I am a Falcons fan, I also love the Bills very much. Not even sure how it happened. I just have always loved the Bills. But I will say, the thing is, at least I think the Bills actually might be more disappointing than the Falcons, because the Falcons, you know what you're going to get. You're either going to make the playoffs or you're not. Your expectations are never that high. But the Bills, it's like they're constantly edging you. It's like they just get there, they're almost in the Super Bowl, and then boom, blow it every fucking time. So honestly, I think it might be more disappointing to be a Buffalo fan than it is an Atlanta fan. Big
words here on This, That, and the Other.
But anyways, moving on from that, because I'm not going to bore you too much with football. What do you got going on? You watch any good TV, Ian?
Well, I mean, of course, I keep up with wrestling. I keep up with WWE wrestling pretty much every I'm up to date.
So not the other guys?
Well, no, I do watch a little bit of TNA and a little bit of AEW. I watch a lot of Will Ospreay matches, but, like, I don't watch much AEW besides that.
Right.
TNA I've kind of been watching because the Hardy Boys are back. So, but it's now the Hardys. So,
okay.
But
you got to change things. You got to change your name when you change brands, I guess.
Well, apparently, I guess
It's
I
probably like some kind of trademarking issue or
I
something
listened
like that.
I listened to the CVV podcast, and Jeff and Matt both kind of clarified that like the Hardy Boys with a Z is branded to the WWE.
Gotcha. See,
So,
I knew it was something like that.
Yeah, so that's why they had to use like the Hardys and like S's and Z's and stuff like that. So,
Oh, speaking of wrestling,
Yeah.
you know what I started watching? I started watching that show Heels.
oh yeah, that's right. You were
Yeah, it's on Netflix now. Yeah, dude, that show's fucking
Okay.
badass. I'm about 5 episodes in, and I didn't know this beforehand. It takes place in Georgia and all that shit, so it's very interesting. It's cool for guys like us. Yeah, dude. Except the guys are really big UGA fans, which I don't
Well,
really
also
love that.
isn't the main dude Green or Arrow? Isn't that the same?
I
same
don't
dude?
know. I've
Okay.
never watched Arrow. I'm really
Okay.
you know this about me. I'm very bad at keeping up with movies and TV. Like there's so much shit I have not seen.
I mean,
and
same,
may never
same.
get
It
around to
happens.
seeing.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just too busy, man. I got too much shit going on. But when I sit down and do like fall in love with a TV show, I blast through that shit. I watch it so fucking fast, and then I got nothing else to do. You know.
All right,
And then
so I'll tell you something, and then I want to hear also what yours also might be. So my guilty pleasure right now, absolute and whatever you guys can call me, whatever it is, leave it in the comments. Tell me what you think. But the fucking show Love Is Blind, dude. It's oh my god, it's
my wife watches that show.
dude.
But I don't understand. Why is it called Love Is Blind? Like, what is the blind aspect of it?
So they meet behind like a portal. Essentially, it's like a door.
So it's like
but-
a dating game.
Yeah, but like they have like pods and stuff, and they have to like get to know each other, like, and they have like interviews and like date nights and all this
Okay.
all this stuff.
Okay.
But
Wait, do
it's
they have
just-
date nights behind walls, like they can't see each
yeah,
other? when
yeah,
they're
yeah.
on a
Like
date?
the crew will like set up
Oh,
like things
that's
in the
fucking
thing
weird.
for them to do. It very much. It
Let me
is
ask you
very
this.
weird.
Has
but
there ever been a time on that show where there's been a reveal and the person's like, "Oh fuck, you're ugly. We're not doing this."
Yeah. I don't. Not in any of the seasons I've watched. I do feel like it has happened.
Yeah.
But at the same
Man,
time,
that would
like,
suck.
yo, some of these people's reactions, like, they are. It's because they've just been so engulfed in this show. So like, when that shit drops or the door separates, these people's reactions, like,
Yeah, it's
you will
either
see.
a thank God or a oh shit.
Oh, literally, dude. Like, these people's reactions is just like you either see the best or the worst. And 9 times out of 10, like the episodes I've watched, like I said, you do see like the oh my god, it's so wonderful,
Okay,
like that
good.
kind of stuff. Yeah. But it just
I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you and say
It's
that
reality
I'm
TV.
not gonna watch it.
no,
But-
don't.
But
don't.
if you love it, you know what? I like that for you. I love that for you that you found that. Good job, man.
Thanks, man.
But moving on, in this episode, we've got another interview with a guy from the South Side who I grew up with. That accidentally became a trend. I think we're going to morph out of that. But yeah, we've just been kind of like, hey, let's talk to Joey's friends the past couple episodes, which has been great. No complaints at all. But it's just kind of ironic how it's turned into that.
I mean, I think it's been kind of cool getting to know your friends
It
and
is
getting
kind
to
of
know
cool.
how
I'm not,
you came up.
And in all
you know.
honesty, I guess you do got to use your resources because we do have more interviews lined up with people we know, but these people aren't necessarily from the South Side. But it's been cool to kind of like show up for the South Side these first couple of episodes. I really enjoyed that. And today we talked to my buddy Josh, who's been a musician for going on 20-something years now. I've known him for a very long time. He grew up playing in punk bands. Now he does a singer-songwriter thing, kind of like a more folksy acoustic stuff. It's really good. So we got to know him a little bit better, and that's what that interview is. And before we go into that, you got anything you want to share with anybody, Ian?
No, not really this week.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing really to share. Nothing
All right.
really going on this week.
Good. Well, shut the fuck up and let's get to Josh's interview. All right, everybody. I would like to welcome another old friend of mine from the Fayette County music scene, Josh Fletcher. Josh, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good, man. I saw you just got back from roller skating with the kids. How'd that go?
Yeah, first time at the Cascade Roller Rink tonight.
Nice.
It was so much fun. I
Yeah.
honestly forgot how much fun roller skating was.
Did you really feel your age this time, or was it all natural?
No, it was great. I felt good. I felt younger than I felt in
Nice.
a long time. I was cruising, dude.
I don't know,
I
dude.
was
I've never been good at roller skating in the first place, so I really don't want to try right now.
I was really good at a younger age, but I feel like if I got back into that, oh God, I feel like I
I
would
don't think it'd
do
be good
some.
for any of us.
Yeah, I don't know.
there
I
was
don't
like a
know.
couple of moments where it got a little squirrely.
Yeah,
But I never slammed. Like I never ate it, and I thought that it was possible.
yeah, yeah,
Because
definitely.
I
I,
get cocky when I'm doing stuff like that, man.
I don't know if I'm at the age where I got to worry about like my hips or anything yet, but my knees definitely feel it almost immediately, man.
I might feel it tomorrow. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's not gonna not happen, but
Okay.
Oh,
I'm
that's
okay for
always,
now.
but that's always when it's going to hurt is the day
Yeah,
after. Like, of course, like you go out and you do something like that, it's going to, oh God. Yeah. Just thinking of days of like riding fixed gear bikes the day after,
Yeah,
ooh,
it's
going
brutal.
to work, your legs just feeling like jello.
yeah.
God,
Every time I go
brutal,
skateboarding,
brutal.
it's like a 3 day
Oh, so
recovery.
you still
Yeah.
skateboard now?
Yeah, not like I used to, obviously, but that was another one of those things where it's just like why wouldn't I? It's fun. I
Yeah,
still know how. Like and I've got young kids, and like they're getting older, and Winnie, my oldest, is like starting to find stuff to get into,
that's cool.
and she's had a skateboard since she was like 2 years old,
Well, that's cool that she
and so
gravitated to skateboarding. That's an awesome thing, man.
I don't know if she did it on her own, but she
Has
got
some
a gentle
coercing.
push. Yeah.
But yeah, that's actually something I wanted to touch on because with our previous guest, Joseph, we talked about growing up in Fayette County, getting into the Fayette County music scene. And I had always said that surprisingly, Fayette County is where I found skateboarding. Fayette County is where I found punk rock. It's where I found hardcore. Of all places, just a suburban Baptist town in the South. What was your experience growing up there?
Man, yeah, I it was a cool. It was honestly like a cool place to grow up. And I kind of feel like I found all that stuff by accident.
Yeah.
I started skateboarding. I had this video. I got a video when I was a kid. I was probably God 5 or 6 years old, and I got handed this video. It was called Skateboard Super Stunts, and it was just this like
Sick.
80s. I looked it up not too long ago, and you can still find it, and it's pretty sick. It's got like Christian Hosoi like riding all these ramps
Oh,
and doing all these like
nice.
early grab methods and stuff. And I was kind of like was pretty into it. And so then I got a skateboard. My grandma got me a skateboard, like this pink Nash, like fish shape, like single kicktail
Hell yeah,
Nash
grandma.
skateboard. Yeah. And I just like rode it around and fell off for what felt like years. And it was like for me, I was really bad about sticking to stuff. Like
Yeah.
I didn't like to learn stuff. Um, like I wanted to do stuff, but I didn't want to take the time to like learn how to do things. And so I had to find a thing that was like fun to be bad at.
Yeah.
And it turns out that skateboarding was that thing for me. Like it's fun to roll around in a skateboard and fall off, and then eventually you keep
Well, that's
riding it
so funny that
and
you had
it
such
starts
a
to make
hard time
sense.
sticking to stuff because you got into skateboarding and into playing guitar, which are two things that you have to stick at to get any sort of good at.
Yeah, I mean, well, playing guitar didn't take the first time I tried it either. So I started playing guitar for the first time in the third grade.
Oh,
I
okay.
took lessons. I took lessons at Atina's, if you remember Atina's music in
I
Fayetteville.
do. Yeah.
Oh
Um,
yes.
so I took lessons over there, and like the guy would leave me with like homework to do, basically. Like, here's the things you need to do to practice this week. Come back next week, and I never ever did it because I it was all just stuff I didn't care about. Like I didn't want to do. I didn't want to learn how to play chords. I just wanted to like play solos or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's how everybody is. That's why I always tell people like I'm 35 and I've never learned how to play guitar, but if I sit down with it, I just want to learn how to shred. Like I don't want to
Yeah, you
learn
just want to shred.
yeah, I don't want to learn anything else. Just teach me power chords and teach me how to play fast. That's all I want to fucking know.
So power chords is actually like the reason that I learned to play guitar because it's like if you can like get your hand around a bar chord and play a Ramon song, like everything is kind of at your disposal. If you're like if you especially if you're like into punk, which I had gotten into like after a while, I just like I figured out you could play a power chord. I was like, oh, I can play the entirety of Bush's Glycerine
Okay.
like with this one chord shape and just moving
Exactly.
it up
Yeah.
and down the neck. And that's how I got into playing guitar. And it was like the same kind of like all that stuff wound itself together with me when I was young because Like I'd
Was that
started
like the song
skateboarding.
when you were playing guitar? Was that the
Yeah.
song where you're like, I want to play Bush's Glycerine?
No, it was just like I don't
I
know
think that's
what
where
it
people start. They
was.
either start with they either start trying with Stairway to Heaven or Bush's Glycerine. You know, there
Yeah.
is no in between.
It was like Glycerine, and actually two Bush songs were like instrumental in my learning how to play guitar. And I'm not like they're the two Bush songs that I know. Like
Sick.
they're the only
Hell
ones.
yes.
But I was like, oh, I could play this whole song, and I don't know why it was that song, dude. But I learned to read tabs, and I was like, oh shit, I can just play. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
That and Machine Head, it was like
Is
learning
Glycerine
how to play
literally just
octave
one
chords.
chord the entire song?
It's I mean it's a bar chord thing. It's
Okay.
like it's like every rock song for like 20 years was
So you're saying if you learn how to play Glycerin by Bush, you can play any Ramones song.
you can play, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Right away. You could do it right away.
Perfect.
Awesome. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do know from knowing you personally that Ramones were a huge influence for you when you started getting into punk rock into your teenage years. But what were your initial musical influences and what led you into punk rock?
Oh, dude, I got into punk through MXPX, and I got into MXPX because of skateboarding, and it was it was the best entry point for me because I grew up in a like Southern Baptist house, like pretty conservative. But if they sold it at the Christian bookstore, like it was fair game, right? So I walked into like Sunrise Christian Bookstore in Fayetteville, and they had the Let It Happen, and it like big MXPX like career retrospective. Had the little like guy on the front. He was riding a skateboard, and I had just like kind of started getting into skateboarding, and I was like, well, this seems like something that I could hang with. And so I bought that and started listening to it and just got super into MXPX. And from there, like I've always gone backwards with my like musical tastes because my parents are not like super musical. They're not big fans of anything, right? So it's not like I wasn't given this like classic rock education growing up. It was like I got into MXPX. I was like, oh, what's this about? And like MXPX was super into Social Distortion, so I like started listening to Social Distortion and started getting into like all of the early mid '70s punk stuff from there. And like, of course, it was like the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, the Clash. Like those are, they're everybody's favorite bands, but like the Ramones, for whatever reason, like super resonated with me just because of how kind of unique it was while still being super like attainable from like a musical standpoint.
Yeah.
It's like
it's music that everybody can learn how to play, right?
Yeah. Well, it's music, and that was like kind of the thing, right? That's the big like Johnny Ramone goes to a New York Dolls show, like notices that they can't really play their instruments. It's like I can't really play, but I could start a band. And then the Ramones started a band, and they're not very good, but they're cool, right. And they're playing all these shows, and people who like can't play or are learning to play, they like just decide to start a band. And like that's kind of what we did.
They kind of set the standard. The Ramones did, letting you know like you don't have to have like guitar solos, you don't have to have insane riffs. You just have to make something that stands out and something that sounds good. And they did that to perfection. Like the Ramones are one of the greatest bands of all time, and also saying that they're one of the simplest bands of all time.
I might say that the Ramones are the greatest rock and roll band of all time.
Okay, I don't think very many people would argue with you.
Tyler, my friend Tyler would, and we've argued about it a lot. He says it's the Clash.
But when you define rock and roll, like are you even including like Rolling Stones and all that shit in there, or just like a certain type of punk?
No, I think so this is a complicated answer. The answer is yes. I think the Ramones are. I think the Ramones are the greatest rock and roll band of all time, and I think that not because of their like skill or even like the songs, which I think the songs are incredible. And they're super clever and really well written, and like but like obviously like the Stones technically better band, like Keith Richards technically better guitar player, like Charlie Watts better drummer, all these things like there are more technical.
I don't know as much about music as you do, but like here, I'm thinking of the analogy I always use, like with football. Like people always want to compare, Falcons fans always want to compare Mike Vick to Matt Ryan, and I always tell people Mike Vick is a way better athlete than Matt Ryan ever could be, but Matt Ryan was a better quarterback in my book. So it's kind of like that. Like, yeah, they're a better band, but this is more fun. This is more me. This
Yeah.
is what I like more.
Yeah, well, like the Stones, for example, like you're taking the Stones as an example, and the Stones are also like one of my very favorite bands of all time. But the Stones are just like British guys doing American blues. Like they're
Okay.
like, and they made something different out of that eventually. Um, but the Ramones are just kind of like playing songs, like kind of songs stripped down to their barest essence. And from that, you build entire genres. Like there is no punk rock without the Ramones. Like there is no hardcore. There's no new wave. There's no grunge. There's all of these things sort of like spring out of this one band.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not as simple as all that, but like I think if you boil it down to its essence, like that's for me like
Well, all
the
of those
most
bands
influential band
always
of all
attribute
time.
them.
Yeah,
Like you got Bad Brains, you got Black Flag, you got Cro-Mags, all these bands that sound nothing like Ramones, and they'll straight up tell you like we wouldn't be a band if we never heard the Ramones.
yeah. I mean, you think about like Nirvana and like Kurt Cobain saying that like "Hey, wait" refrain, and that I forget which Nirvana song it is now, but like it's like directly a tribute to a Ramones song.
Right.
Like things like that, they don't happen without that band, and that band I think only happens in a very specific place in time. Um, but yeah, that's a conversation I've had a lot, and I will continue to have. I think that yeah, best
I
band of
mean,
all
well,
time.
I'm on your side in that one. I agree with what you said. Now,
Yeah.
discovering MXPX, were you playing guitar again at the time? Were you revisiting instruments, and did you hear that and be like, okay, well, now this is the style of music I want to play, or was it still a gradual progression to starting your own band?
No, so I was always like a pretty imaginative and fanciful kid.
Okay.
Um, and I all like even though I had like essentially quit learning to play guitar. I tried to learn when I was really young. I quit, but I never in my mind like I was always I could kind of play, right? Like in my
Mm-hmm.
mind I couldn't, but like in my mind I could. But when I started listening to MXPX and in the like and just getting into punk and like seeing these bands that started from like nothing, I wanted to do that, right? So like I wanted to be in a band. And so we were like at this point maybe in the sixth or seventh grade. And I took like one beginner guitar class at church.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, like just taught myself how to play. I learned how to read tabs. And that was for me, like Glycerine was a huge song at the time. This was like, late 90s, whatever. And for whatever reason, I looked up the tabs to that song. Maybe it was on the radio or something, and realized like I can play the whole thing. And that for me like unlocked an entire world. Like, oh, I can with this one chord shape, I can play most of the stuff that I want to play. Like all the stuff that my favorite bands are playing, I can play that. Not as well, but I can play it, or I can at least approximate it. Um, and so from there, I just really wanted to be in a band, and like having MXPX is like a north star for
Right.
me as like
Exactly.
a Baptist kid skate rat who's like into punk. Um, I was just like, all right, well, who can play what? And so my friend Tyler was also like kind of learning to play guitar. And then we had this other friend, Colin, who basically we told him like, hey, we're just start a band and you need to learn how to play drums.
Okay.
But Mike Herrera in MXPX plays bass, and um,
Is that what got you to start playing bass and being singing at the
mhm.
same time? Okay.
Yeah, so I started playing bass in this band because like my other friend was playing guitar, our other friend was playing drums, and we didn't know anybody that played bass. And I was like, oh, I can play. Like I can write the songs on guitar, but I'll play bass. It's fine.
Right.
Um, and so I just wanted to play like this Ernie Ball Music Man Stingray bass that Mike
Yeah.
Herrera played, and like I learned to play Chick Magnet immediately on the
I
bass.
was
Like,
just
that
about
bass
to
line is
say
iconic.
at those shows, I remember the Chick Magnet cover being a staple of all your shows. There was never a set
I
without it.
think every show, yeah, I think
Yeah.
every show, Chick Magnet and Blitzkrieg
Nice.
Pop.
Yep.
Hell
Yeah.
yes. Hell yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, was the first I think the first show you guys had was at a church event, like Midnight Mayhem or something like that, where you guys came out and played
So
Blitzkrieg Bop.
we did that. This is our second or third show. The first show we
Okay.
ever played was at Fayette Middle School.
Oh, okay.
It was what was it? First Priority event. First Priority was like the Christian teen club at the middle school, and they had like a block party.
Okay,
And
nice.
our youth pastor uh, asked us if we would play, and we were stoked. So we played. It was mostly a cover set. I think we may have played one original song.
Okay.
Yeah, it was our freshman year of high school. Yeah, freshman year of high school. We played the middle school, um, and that was. And then I think our second or third show we did. We went down to Macon and played for a youth group,
Oh, wow. That's a big
Pine
trip.
Forest Baptist Church. Yeah, it was like we've been a band for 30 minutes and we're like on
Yeah.
the road.
There you go.
I think we
dude.
brought a church group down from Fayetteville to this
I
thing.
think
in
I went to
Macon.
that. I think
sure
I
you
did
did.
go to that. Because I think we all went down in one of the youth group buses to that show.
Mhm.
But yeah, so let's talk about your experience with the Fayette County music scene, because we were talking about how the outside, like Peachtree City and the Clayton County area, had more of like a hardcore sound, but Fayetteville itself had more of like a pop punk, borderline emo, but more of like Ramon style, a little bit of Rancid style punk rock in it. What was your experience like being in the Fayetteville music scene?
Yeah, there really was some cool stuff that went on. We had, there was like a group of guys who were about 5 years older than us, and they had started this like, also big MXPX guys, but they had started like a pop punk thing. Same deal, like bass player was the singer, three-piece punk band. We eventually became like a four-piece, and um, I remember like they were called the Star-Bellied Sneeches, and I
Right.
remember when we first opened for them, it was like a big deal for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there were cool bands around, and there were some not cool bands around too. Um, we had some buds. I mean, really, like to this day, some of the best musicians I've ever seen were kind of born out of that like weird little Fayetteville scene. Like
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember Trevor Bird's song,
absolutely.
um, but Trev is one of the best guitar players I've
Yeah,
ever seen in my life, and
yeah,
he always was, right? Like
yeah.
he was from the time that I met him.
All around great
Um,
dude too, and we
yeah,
really miss him.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I hate I hate thinking about what happened with Trev and
Yeah.
all that shit. But like like he and that the band that he was in, he played bass in his band too. Like he was the best musician in that band, and he was just like playing bass. Um, but all the guys in that band were great. They were called Straight On Till Morning.
Yep.
Um, and they were this kind of like emo punk thing. We had like the Sneeches played pop punk, and then there was like oh gosh, I can't even remember. I mean, like Parkside View, all those dudes were like from Peachtree City,
Mm-hmm.
and they did
Yep. We
really
talked
well. I
about
think
those
those
guys in the
guys.
last episode too.
I'm sure you did,
Yeah.
yeah, with Joseph. Yeah, those. I think
Well,
those
I
dudes are
mentioned their name.
still.
I didn't really go into talk about them, but I did mention them. Yeah.
Yeah, um, yeah. I mean, we kind of built this weird scene, and there was kind of a punk scene in Fayetteville before we came along. And they would always play shows at the Log Cabin.
Log
Like
Cabin. Yeah. That was my very,
um,
very first local show. Was at the Log
yeah,
Cabin. Yep.
Yeah.
dude.
Also mentioned the
Man,
GTO's parking lot.
Yeah.
GTO's parking lot was huge. Played a bunch of shows at GTO's parking lot. I really don't know how we ever did it because I never met the person who booked shows there.
Yeah.
Never met them.
Yeah.
I would just ask around. I was like, "Hey, do you know the GTO's guy?"
Well, no, I
They're like,
remember every
yeah,
now and then the owner
You know
would
the
come
mystery
out
person.
from the kitchen with an apron on and he would just kind of look at us and like
Yeah.
smile and nod and then just go back to what he was doing. I don't think anybody ever got paid. I don't even know if we ever actually asked permission or we just showed up and set up, you know?
No, that was the booking guy. Was the cook.
Oh, it was?
yeah. I'm
No,
I'm
I'm
sure
just
it
saying.
was.
He didn't
I'm
tell
sure
the
it
manager
was.
or the owner and was just like, "Yeah, y'all pull up and play a show."
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, nobody ever got paid. But we didn't really expect to, I don't guess. We just wanted a place to play, man. And like, yeah, if you're gonna give us your parking lot and let us plug into your like where you keep your fans up in the rafters of your weird drive-in burger chain. Like, yeah, sure, we'll plug our amps in and just go for it. And then we started doing the shows at Crosspoint, and that kind of became its own scene.
Yeah, we were talking about Crosspoint heavy on the last episode. Crosspoint, like the band I was in, we would have not existed if it wasn't for Crosspoint. Crosspoint was amazing to us, lending us, because by the time we started playing shows, Knockout had already moved on. You guys were in college, you guys were living in Atlanta, doing different stuff. So back then we were just playing like every weekend. But before that, I remember seeing you guys there literally every single weekend during the summer. And it just became its own, like I said before, it became a music venue that happened to be a church, but like, that's what kids knew about it. Like some of the best hardcore punk shows I've ever seen in my life were at Crosspoint Community Church, which is wild to say, but it's true.
It was like having a place like that in a town like that is like so crucial. Like we needed that space to like kind of figure out what we were doing and who we were. And like the log cabin was kind of like, it wasn't happening anymore because the Tree Fort dudes kind of like fucked it for everybody.
Destroyed it. I was at that show.
Yeah. Were you at that show? I wasn't at that show.
They annihilated those
Yeah, that wasn't cool at all, by the way.
It was terrible.
Destroyed the only venue that Fayetteville had. So
there were two of them, and they destroyed them both. It was the log cabin, and then the spot at the baseball field, like the Kiwanis Fields, had like.
I don't think I ever went to a show there.
Yeah, I don't know. If I ever went to that one. I
went to a couple there, and this might be apocryphal. I don't know. So if any of the dudes from Tree Fort are listening, like. Okay. But
shout out Tree Fort if you're listening.
Yeah. Shout out, guys. You know, cool.
But what I heard was that they like took a baseball bat to a printer in like a municipal building at the Kiwanis. It's like, come on, dude. It's like the rest of us want to play too.
Does any of that surprise us though? Honestly.
No. But like having that space is so crucial, man. It's how we learn to be people, and not just like, I don't know, man. Like.
I think in such a weird way too, like Crosspoint had this like professionalism to it. Like even though it was a very DIY venue, it was still like, hey, you come in at this time, you load in at this time, you go in through this door, you do your sound check, and then you hang out in that room until it taught you the structure of how shows were supposed to go.
It's because you were fucking around at a church.
Well, yeah.
You kind of have to be semi-professional.
Yeah, I mean, oh god, I remember we did the first show at Crosspoint, and I think it was the Kick. I think it's because I was trying to book the Kick, which is a band that became Gasoline Heart.
Great shows back then, dude. Great shows.
Man. It was the Kick. I think it was the Kick, and Watashi Wa was maybe the first show that we ever booked at Crosspoint. It was because we couldn't find anywhere else to play, and Tyler, our guitar player, like knew this girl whose dad was running this community church and said, I think I may have a place for us. And we like set up a meeting with this guy, and he was like, all right. He's like, I don't know. Like, I'll let you guys use the space, but like, I don't even think they took any money from us.
How was it landing? Because Watashi Wa was signed a tooth and nail and everything. How did you like 4 Fayetteville kids convince Watashi Wa to come play this church in Peachtree City, Georgia?
My entire musical career has been born off of me just bothering people until they say yes.
Okay.
Like, and it was like I had met Lou DeFabrizio at a Kick show. They opened for Squad 5-0, which like we can talk about Squad as long as we want to too. I loved that band.
Yes.
We haven't gotten there yet, but I do plan on mentioning them at some point.
Oh, let's go. I don't know how much time you guys have, but
I got all fucking night, dude. The girls are asleep now. We're
good. But I've met Lou at a Squad show, and Squad to me seemed unattainable, right? Like they were also on Tooth and Nail. They were going to sign to Capitol eventually. Like they seemed like a band.
Which they did.
Yeah, they did. But the Kick was like, I could get the Kick. Like I can book the Kick, right? Like they're just kind of playing punk shows around. They're opening, like they're playing these great shows, but they're
amazing live band too, dude.
They're an incredible live band. And so I just emailed out of the blue. I was like, hey, would love for you guys to come and play a show here. Like we got all this cool stuff going on. And so they announced the tour with Watashi Wa, and I just emailed Lou and I was like, can we get a show? I was
Yeah.
like, if I and he asked me, I think he asked me for a guarantee. It was like $500 or something.
Not terrible.
No, he's like, if you can guarantee,
Because they were coming up from Winter
we'll
Park.
come.
They were from Winter Park at that point, right?
Well, they were on the road, yeah. So they were, and I think Watashi was a California band.
I
But
think they're
yeah,
they're either California or Seattle. I'm not sure.
they're one of those. But I was heavy into that Watashi album that they were touring.
Yeah, that's a great
And
album too, man. Love of
it was one of
Life.
those things, man. Yeah, that seems like unattainable too, right? Like the fact that they were touring together. I was like, if I can get this, it's going to be crazy. So I sent him an email, and he emails me back, and I was like, if you can guarantee me $500, we'll come. And I was like doing the math. I was like, cool. So if we charge like $10 at the door, I can get 50 people in the door, and then we're good.
Yeah.
And I just remember like standing at the front door, counting people as they came in. I was like, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4. And like as soon as we got to 50, I was like, cool, we're good. We can do this. Like I'm not going to lose any money.
But did
I didn't have
Watashi
any
Wa
to
want
lose.
money too?
I mean, that's crazy. Those two bands wanted a $500 guarantee for the night.
Oh wow!
That's
So
wild.
for both of them collectively.
For both of them.
Wow.
Which again,
okay.
like having toured after that, a $500 guarantee is awesome.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there were nights when I didn't sniff $500. There were nights when I didn't sniff $5. But man, and the other part of that's crazy is that they asked for a $500 guarantee, and so like $500 was what they got paid for the night, and then I got to keep the rest of it.
Nice.
which was significantly more than $500. I felt a little bit bad about that.
So moving on from Knockout, because Knockout was short-lived, great band, but short-lived. You did go on to do your solo stuff, and this is where I was going to mention. I did get to see things come full circle. There was a show you played where it was with Gasoline Heart, but one of the brothers from Squad 5 happened to be there. And then a show you were playing with them ended up being a surprise Squad 5 show. And I don't think I've ever seen you that happy in person in my entire life.
I don't know that I've ever been that happy in my entire life.
And you have children.
I've gotten married and have 2 children. Yeah.
So how did that happen? Did you know going in there that Squad 5 was going to play, or was it kind of just like may or may not happen?
We found out the day of.
Okay.
We were doing. I think that show was in Marietta, I think. And Lou texted me, and he's like, "We're on our way. Like we're on our way to Loden. We're gonna stop. We're gonna stop in Savannah and pick up Jeff, and they're gonna do some Squad songs." I was like, "Excuse me?"
Oh, so he straight up told you.
He told me like the day of that it was going to happen. And so like I remember like this was like early days of social media, and I think I was like on Twitter or Facebook or something immediately. I was like, Squad 5 reunion is happening tonight, like drop everything and come here.
Yeah.
I was the only person in the world that cared, I think. But yeah, that was like that show. And then there was another one where we played at the 7 venue, and it was us and Gasoline Heart, and then Jeff had started another band that didn't last very long. I think they were called Holy Holy.
Yes, I remember
and I couldn't. And so that they played that show, and I remember like Jeff was outside the like live room playing a Poison song on an acoustic guitar, and it just happened to be in the key of G, and I had a harmonica on me that was in the key of G, and so I like hopped up on stage and played harmonica to this Poison song with Jeff Fortson from Squad 5 and like,
nice.
I was like, oh yeah, all of my dreams are coming true.
Yeah,
I'm like
and
22 years old.
So let's also talk about how Knockout ended and what made you decide like I want to keep going with music. I'm going to start this solo career.
So I started doing solo stuff before the Knockout was officially over. I gotten really into Ryan Adams when I was 16, 17.
I think the entire county did it around that time too. He was unavoidable. He was everywhere.
This was like the rock and roll album. It was actually that came from Squad 5. Like all of these things like interconnect. Like there was a link on the Squad 5 website, and it was like the days when you would visit a band's website often, you know?
Right.
Yeah. You know, you remember?
Where bands would like
Yeah.
actually write out their bios and things that they like and stuff like that. You know?
Yeah, well, they'd have like they'd all had blogs and stuff. Like all the internet was like new and weird, and people were just blogging because
Yeah.
they could now. And
Now
so I
people
was
podcast.
visiting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was like visiting the Squad 50 website often, and there was a link to Ryan Adams, and then I saw him do "So Alive" from the Rock and Roll record on
Okay,
Letterman,
yeah.
I think. And
He was
so I
on
got
Letterman
really
all
into
the
that.
time. Letterman
Mhm.
really loved him. Some of the best Ryan Adams performances I've seen on video are from Letterman. He was there all the time.
Every once in a while, I'll go back and watch that like first one that I saw just to see if it still holds up. And
Is
it
that
does.
when
Like,
he had the like crazy spiked hair and shit?
it was when he had broken his wrist. It was like after
Okay.
he'd broken his wrist, and so he wasn't playing guitar. And I think the outfit he's wearing is wild.
Mhm.
I think there's an untucked shirt and a tie. Maybe there's a vest involved, like big flared
yeah.
jeans. This was when we were wearing like flared jeans from like the Gap women's section.
Well, yeah, it was him. And then you mentioned the other day the band Jet. That was kind of like the fashion statement right there at that time.
Listen, I still have a pair of Gap ladies aggressively flared jeans upstairs in my closet that I put on for like a costume party not too long ago.
Yeah.
Stage
Are you gonna
fans.
whip them out for when Jet comes to the tabernacle?
I can't do it, man. They're too low rise. I can't do a low rise women's pant anymore.
Yeah, well, you just wear a long shirt.
Yeah. I would like if someone gave me. Yeah, exactly. Like a suit vest and like a tie. I have to grow my hair back out and get like a weird asymmetrical haircut. If you handed me like a pair of like regular high-ish waisted like flared jeans, I'd give it a shot. Like I'd try it again.
All right,
Nice.
so there's a chance.
There's a chance. Oh, absolutely. I would do it.
So it really.
What are we even talking about?
Well, was it really Ryan Adams that kind of like made you want to keep pursuing? What else were the influences?
Yeah. So
aside from that,
so getting like I said, I got really into Ryan Adams, and I wanted to write like country music. Essentially, it was like my first. It was my first time hearing songs that were constructed like for the sake of being songs that had that like they had something in them that nodded to where I was from. Like I didn't consider myself super Southern. I was just like a suburban kid. But like I grew up like my people are from Moultrie, Georgia, and like North Georgia.
Y'all are in the woods, bud.
Yeah, like I have like NASCAR heritage in my blood. Like there's
yeah, dude.
And so like it's always kind of been there, and like hearing these songs that were so well constructed that had this drawl to them really intrigued me for some reason. And I was getting more into playing guitar and more into like songcraft, like really concentrating on writing good songs. And this just connected with me in a way that like nothing had ever really connected with me before. And so I started writing a lot of songs on acoustic guitar. That I didn't bring to the band because they didn't really fit. They were all like very kind of alt country when that was like when it was now they call it Americana, but like when it was alt country and like Uncle Tupelo and Wilco was still a country band and stuff like that. And so I started writing a lot of those things. And then it was actually it was the Straight On Till Morning guys were playing. Gosh, I think it was a Relay for Life event, like in Fayetteville, and like they were the band playing Relay for Life and they asked, and Donnie and TJ in that band knew that I had been doing some solo stuff and working on a couple of things. And they're like, "Hey, why don't you just come and play some songs before we play?" I was like, "Yeah, cool." And so I took all these songs I had written, and I like fully ripped off the Ryan Adams Wonderwall cover in my set. And I remember being up there and I was playing. This is such a terrible story. I was playing Wonderwall, and this girl, this like really emo girl, started crying. Right?
Oh,
she's
no.
Like,
yes.
Oh no.
It's like
yes.
Because in all honesty, I mean, like I still don't understand the lyrics to Wonderwall. I think it's a great song, but I have no idea what the fuck a Wonderwall is.
No, they don't make any sense. There's a line in a Travis song that says "What's a Wonderwall?" anyway, which I think is great.
Yeah.
But Yeah, and so like as cliche and stupid of a moment as that was, it felt really good to make music that moved someone in that
Yeah.
way. And it just so happened that the guitar player in the Knockout, which is the band that we had started, was starting to kind of flake. He
Hmm.
wasn't showing up to rehearsals, and like we couldn't really book things because we never knew if he was going to be there or not.
Right. So it just
And
kind of
so I
made
just
sense
started
to go off and do your own thing then.
so I just started playing more and more by myself. And like the Knockout never really broke up. Like it wasn't a thing where we're like, all right, we're done, we're gonna play a last show. It's just like, all right, well, I'm
Hmm.
just gonna like I'm getting these opportunities to go and play coffee shops and other stuff like by myself. I'm just gonna keep doing that because like I can count on me, right? Like I know that I'm gonna show up for this stuff, and I can sit down and write songs, and I can do this by myself. And so I started just playing out as Joshua Fletcher, and then we ended up, I'll tell you what really put the nail in the coffin is that I got gifted my senior year of high school. I got gifted a week in a recording studio
Oh, okay.
um, in Oxford, Mississippi, with this guy named Andrew Ratcliffe, who
Okay.
was like our dads worked together.
Oh,
And
I
my
got
dad
you.
came home one day and he was like, "Hey, this guy I work with, David, his son runs a studio out in Mississippi. Um, why don't you guys talk and maybe like if you wanted to go and do some recording, that could be something that that would be like our graduation gift to you, right?"
Okay.
And so it was like February 2005. I drove to Oxford, Mississippi, and I sat and made this like Americana record with this guy as like a solo project thing. And I wouldn't like put it out now,
Okay.
but as is like for like being a 17-year-old, it felt really good,
Yeah.
and it kind of like, and I got some, and that same producer had a couple projects he was working on in Mississippi, and he invited me back to open for this band that he was like kind of pushing in Oxford at this place called Proud Larry's, and so I had to like build a band from like a solo project, and so I
Okay.
grabbed. It's actually like all these things like I really feel like all my dreams got to come true. Like
All at once.
these these dreams that you have when you're a kid, right? They're like attainable, but you don't know
Hmm.
that. So like
Yeah.
I mentioned the Starlight Sneeches earlier, and like those dudes were so cool to me, and like my idols growing up. And I asked them if they would come and be in this band with me that I was putting together for the solo project, and they agreed. And so like I got to bring them in and play with them, and then my friend Colin, who was playing drums in the Knockout, like came and played drums,
Well, they
and we
must
just
really
like
love you if they were willing to go to Mississippi to play music with you.
Oxford is great. I
Is it?
can't speak to the rest of the state, but Oxford, yeah, Oxford, Mississippi is awesome. It's like you've been to Athens, right?
Yeah, yeah. I actually work in Athens currently.
So Oxford is Athens, but without all the bulldog shit, which
Oh, perfect.
I love. Um, I mean, yeah, it can also be pretty annoying. I mean, it's super fratty, but
It's it's it's
it's a
very
cool town.
hard commuting to Athens every day and not being a UGA fan because everybody it's almost like having a different political alliance where they get really upset that you and they're like, why? And I have to tell them it's like I'm from Atlanta, I'm not from Athens, so
Yeah,
I've never cheered for UGA, I've never liked them. They're like, oh, but you're here now. I'm like, yeah, but my heart isn't, bud.
yeah. I went to Georgia Tech, um, and being a Georgia Tech fan is it's the worst. It's just
Yeah, I
the
feel you.
worst.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is the worst part of my personality is my like love for Georgia Tech. Because my dad also went to Georgia Tech, and so I grew up with just this like ingrained hatred of all things UGA,
Yep.
and it's very silly, and I understand that it's a personality flaw, but I just can't stand
No,
it.
man, it's like we grew up going to the varsity. We grew up going to Atlanta. When we went to Turner Field, Bobby Dodd was right there. Like to me, I'm from Atlanta, so I cheer for the Atlanta team. That's just always made sense to me my whole life, you know.
Yeah,
Because like half the people I know that are UGA fans, they've never lived in Athens. They've never come to Athens. They didn't go to school in Athens. They're just a fan of a town they've never been to, you know? So, but that's a whole different
It's
conversation.
easy to be a UGA fan these days, but
it is. But whatever. Fuck them. But yeah, so moving on from that, I mean, you hit a lot of milestones with your solo career. I know you got to play with Hanson, which is fucking crazy, but also amazing at the same time. But then you eventually did hit a slump where I know from knowing you personally, there was a point in time where you almost completely walked away from music. And what was that like for you?
So I did completely walk away from it, really. It was I did nothing but try and make this my thing for a long time. And I mean, I did. Like, we put out a couple of records and toured a bunch. And my wife and I had moved, and I had gotten married, first of all. Well, I met a woman, and we moved to Nashville together in 2014.
Okay.
And I had made this record right before we met. I went out to LA and made a record with another one of my like idols, a guy named Alex Deason, who played in this band called the Damn Wells.
Okay.
And Alex and I had made this record in LA, and we kind of sat on it for a little while trying to find somebody to put it out. And we finally found a record label to put it out. So I had this label, and I had a booking agent, and I had a manager. And we finally we're going to put this record out, and it felt like the next step, right? Like, it was going to be the thing that took me to the next step, like put me on this next path to go into making this like a viable career for myself. And we put this record out in 2015, right after I had gotten married, and toured it. Was on the road like a pretty good amount, like 2-3 weeks at a time. Nothing terrible, but 3 weeks here, a month there, 2 weeks there.
Yeah. And you're doing this without your wife? Like, you're doing this on your own?
Completely by myself.
Okay.
When the money was good and I could afford it, I would bring a band out with me. But for the most part, I could only really afford to bring a band with me every once in a while.
And at this point in time, what exactly was good money?
I mean, a couple $100 a night.
Okay.
It would be like, if I was going to get a $500 guarantee for 3 or 4 days in a row, I can maybe think about bringing a band out with me.
Okay.
And you would the booking agent that I had was great about finding me shows that were gonna suck, but we're gonna pay in the middle of a tour. Yeah. So you're gonna do 5 nights. One of those nights is going to be $1,000 guarantee, and you're going to play the absolute worst bar in Waukesha, Wisconsin, right?
Okay.
Which is fine because they've got a budget. And we did I would do colleges. I played Ohio Christian College one time, and it was one of the best guarantees I ever got in my career. But I think I played to 25 people.
Okay.
And it was just stuff like that, and that which kind of wears you down. As a solo artist, for the most part, I was out there by myself, which meant in the car, I don't know, 8 hours a day sometimes, playing and not going to cool places, right? When you imagine yourself on tour, you think all right, cool, I'm gonna do DC, New York, Philly, Boston, I'll pop over to Chicago. I'll do Chicago, Milwaukee.
Yeah. But you're really not. Minnesota, you're doing all these towns nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, you're doing I played a burrito shop on the Jersey Shore one time.
That's actually kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
Pretty sick. Pretty sick.
It was fine. It was
but
fine.
But then also sleeping arrangements, you're sleeping at some random dude's floor. You're sleeping in a shitty motel. You're sleeping in the van.
Yeah.
You know,
bad hotels, sleeping in the car. We actually, one of the full band tours we did with the Damn Wells, and we stayed at this hotel in Vallejo, California.
Okay.
And it was $40 a night for the hotel room. We opened the door to the hotel room. Bud. Listen, right off the interstate. It was bad. We opened the door to this hotel room, and it's just dirty, right? Like the
Mhm.
bed's unmade. It's like very clear that someone has been there recently and no one has been there to clean it up. So I went back to the front desk. I was like, hey, this room's dirty. Like we need a new one. The guy hands me another key. We get in there, like cleaner, but like cigarette burns in the
Ah,
mattress, like still like very much like.
yeah.
So I went back. I was like, listen, man, we need not this. And he just hands me like 4 keys and he's like,
He's
find
like,
the one
take
you
your
want,
pick, dude.
bring me the rest.
No.
And so,
Oh my god.
and so we like settled on a room, but two of the guys in the band were like, no, I'm not. I can't sleep in this room. Like I'm gonna go sleep in the Suburban instead.
Yeah, it's one of
And
those things where
so
you look at it and you're like, I'm gonna get bed bugs. Like it's gonna
yeah, well,
happen.
so I stayed in the room because I felt like I had to, and then
I mean, you put up so
Stuart,
much a fight, you had to, dude.
yeah, and then Stuart, who played bass at the time, stayed in there with me. He I think he slept in all of his clothes on top of the bed, and I think I think I stripped it all the way down and put a t-shirt over the pillowcase, and that's how I slept. With like I brought my own blanket. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was the worst hotel experience I ever had. But it's like stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
And like when you're with a band and you don't have any responsibilities at home, it's fine. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
fun. Like I look back on that memory, it's like it's a good memory. Like it's a weird story, but it's a good memory. But like there are all these things that just compound and compound and compound and compound. And so I'm out there on the road by myself all the time. I had just gotten married. I was leaving my wife at home for weeks at a time, and so she's not happy because I'm leaving her alone.
Yeah.
And we get this opportunity, or we feel like it's an opportunity to move back to Atlanta for a job for her. She studied art direction in school. She got a job offer to go work at an ad agency back in Atlanta, and we talked about it. And I was like, "Listen, I've been like, basically, like, you put your life on hold for me, so I could do this thing. I got this record out. I'm on the road. I've got all these like pieces in place. It feels like it's kind of moving in the right direction. I can do what I'm doing from anywhere. We're in Nashville, but I'm not like co-writing with people. I'm not writing for pitch. So it's like it doesn't matter that I'm in Nashville. I can be in Atlanta. Atlanta's a better town anyway. And so let's move back to Atlanta. So we move back to Atlanta, and she gets like bait and switched in this job where they had told her like, oh, if we land this one client, we're gonna have a budget to hire you full time. They landed this client. They're like, great, it's all on. Come on down. Like we got a spot for you. Pretty much as soon as we get back, they call and they were like, so we landed that big client, but we also lost our other big client.
Oh, of
And so we
course.
no longer have the budget to hire you full time, but
Mhm.
we can still bring you on as an intern.
Yep.
And so like we had moved our entire life back from Nashville to Atlanta, and then I wasn't I didn't have like a job. I was on the road some, but I had kind of finished this like tour cycle of this record that we had put out, and so I wasn't playing as much. And she was doing this job for like $10 an hour or something,
Yeah.
and we had moved back. My parents were living in Milwaukee, but they still had their house in Fayetteville, so we actually moved back to Fayetteville.
Oh
We
wow.
had been married for like we've been married for like 6 months, and we moved from Nashville. We had this great like killer little apartment in Nashville. We moved back from Nashville to Fayetteville and lived in my parents' house. And like right at the beginning of our marriage,
Yeah.
and we were like commuting from Fayetteville
That'll
to
humble you
Midtown
quick, bud.
Atlanta.
Ooh.
Man, listen, we were commuting from Fayetteville to Midtown Atlanta. She was working in Midtown at this agency. I ended up getting a job at the High Museum, which was cool, but also didn't pay any money. And we're like in the car for an hour and a half like every trip, right? Like stuck in traffic between Fayetteville and Atlanta. We have a dog, so we can't like hang out in the city after we're done with work because we got to come let the dog out because it's been on
Yeah.
his own for 10 hours. And it was just like the hardest thing we had ever done. And then the like story that I tell, which is absolutely true, which is like the turning point of my life at the time. I know I've been talking forever, so I'm
No, you're
sorry.
fine, dude.
But we like checked our joint bank account one day to find out that we had $3 between the two of us. And this
Wow.
was at like the beginning of a pay period, not like at the end, like someone's gonna get paid in like 2 days,
Yeah.
we're like out of money, but like we were out and we had like 2 weeks to go.
Yeah.
Um,
Still had to get
and it
gas, still
was,
had to get to work, all that shit.
yeah, all of that. And um, so like that was like a moment where it kind of hit me, and I am embarrassed to say that it did not fully hit me at the time that I needed to do something else right
Okay.
away. But we had a conversation. We had many conversations, but I remember like being in the uh, bathroom, the master bathroom at my parents' house in Fayetteville, Georgia, having this conversation, and Ash, my wife, looked at me and she was like, "You're like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, you're miserable. Like, this isn't fun for you anymore."
Yeah.
And like on top of that, like we can't buy a quarter pounder meal from McDonald's together to share. Like, we don't have enough money. Like, and so like it was a like a world shattering moment for me. But it was like one of those things where I knew like, all right, well, I I love this person. I can't ask this person to do this for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much. Like, I need to shift gears. So let's put it away for a little while. And
Okay.
so I did. I got a job working for the state of Georgia, in marketing. I got a marketing degree from Georgia Tech, 2010.
Nice.
Um, yeah, that was, you can credit my dad for that. 'Cause I wanted to play music. I didn't really care if I went to school or not, but I got into tech. And so my dad was basically like, I don't care what you do. He's like, just go to college
Yeah, just
and then
get
do
a
whatever you
degree.
want.
Yeah.
And so I did. I went to tech. I really went to tech so that I could live in Atlanta and play music. But I had gotten this degree from tech, and so I had like a marketing background, kind of. But I ended up getting this job. I mean, the paid like relatively little, but I didn't know the difference. Like, so
Yeah,
my
because
like,
at least you're making money at this point, you know?
I was like, you're gonna pay me every 2 weeks, like
Yeah.
no matter what, you're just
Yeah.
gonna keep paying me every 2 weeks. I was
It
like,
doesn't
yeah,
matter
done,
how many
cool,
tickets I sell.
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, awesome, yeah, this is great. I'll do whatever you want. But I had to like build a wall
Okay.
in myself between me and music. Like, I couldn't identify that way anymore for like my own mental health, and it hurt. Like, it's hard. And I would still like play live every once in a while,
Yeah.
but for the most part I didn't, because it was like a weird tension to hold. um, and so I started just like seeing myself as like a guy who used to play. Like, I used to play music, and I didn't even really
Yeah.
like, I didn't write anything for years. I didn't finish a song for probably 5 years. I didn't write anything
Wow.
at all.
So what did it take to
Um,
get you back into it though?
it was always kind of there, right? Like, it wasn't anything that I felt like needed to be actively served.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always there. Um, and it was that like second wave of like self discovery as an almost like 30-year-old person, um, or like post 30-year-old person at this point. I had like done my artist journey. I had done my like entree into like corporate America. I worked for the state. I worked for a nonprofit, and I started. COVID happened. Like, so COVID uh, was 2020,
2020, yeah.
and I had been toying with the idea of getting into like advertising creative
Okay.
as like a way to build a creative career to sort of like satisfy that thing in me that wanted to make things. Because the parts of my jobs that I liked were when I got to design things or when I got to write things. And so I was talking to my wife, who was like trained in advertising. She was like, "Well, why don't you be a copywriter?" And I said, "Well, because I've never done it. I don't have a book. I don't have like a portfolio. No, like, who's going to hire me to do copywriting?" And like, at this point, we had had Winnie, our oldest daughter. I have to. We have a kid to pay for. I can't just like
Yeah.
go do things. But we had a neighbor. Our next door neighbor at the time was an old friend of mine who I knew from Atlanta music. He was in this band called Elevation. It was like great, like kind of like U2-y power pop band. They were great.
Okay.
But anyway, so he had just started like a boutique ad agency with a friend of his. Um, and I caught him outside one day and just told him, "Hey, if you ever need a writer on a project, like I'm trying to figure that out." And he knew that I could write because we had played, shows together, and he knew my music and stuff. Um, and so he, like a week later, he was like, "Hey, I have this thing. We need a writer if you want to come write." I was like,
Okay.
"Yeah, great." So I started doing freelance copywriting for this ad agency, and that kind of lit a fire in me to be more creative. Because when I was doing that kind of work, it felt right. Like it was one of those, like, it's very cliche, but it's one of those, like, do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life sort of things. So it's like I was just like making something, and people were using it and like feeling good about it, right? And so
Yeah.
like
So
that
that's
kind of like,
gratifying in itself,
yeah. And it just felt good. And so I decided that, like, one, I wanted to do that as like a job. Um,
Okay.
so I was like, I ended up working for this nonprofit, and then that job went away. And when that job went away, I was like, all right, I'm not going to do anything that's not creative. Like I have a portfolio now. I can like sell myself as a copywriter. I'm just gonna do that. And so I kind of dove into this idea of being a creative professional, and that sort of like reignited something like deep in me that was like, hey, you have this other thing that you do and you're pretty good at.
Right.
Uh, and it's hard to like find. It was hard to find time to like write songs and be a musician. At this point, I have two kids. I have
Yeah.
a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. Um, but my youngest is 3. It's not like we're up all night all the time. Like he's kind of self-contained, and
You
I've
are
been
when you
talking.
have 2 3-year-olds at the same time.
Yeah, no, I don't know what that's like.
But
I
yeah.
don't know what that's like at all. But I, I mean, whew, man, that's a lot. Um,
Look.
but yeah, so I don't know. There's always like that thing very deep in me that was like, you could you could just pick it up. Like
Yeah.
you can do this other thing. You can play. And I've been talking about for the last couple of years, like, all right, well, I have songs that I've written that I haven't recorded or put out. Like I just gotta like make a record. It's like I don't want to do it for myself. I want to put out a record or whatever. And I just never did it. And then about middle of the way through last year, talking to my wife, and I was like, I feel like I should. Now we're at a good place with the kids where, we can take a little time to ourselves. We can take some time to be creative and do these things. I was like, I want to make this record. And she just looked at me. She was like, yeah, do it.
Okay, good.
Just do
There
it.
you go.
Yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I don't know why, like, it's one of those things where it's like it feels self-indulgent because it costs money. It's not like a thing that's gonna
Yeah.
like make us rich or whatever. So
And
it's
then
like,
also it requires time too. So that's time away from your
yeah, it's money
family.
and time, and you never feel like that's gonna be a thing that you take to your partner and you're like, hey, I want to take like at least like at least a week, and I want to spend like a bunch of money
Yeah,
to
because
make
at the
this like
same time, you never
thing.
want to feel shitty for following your dreams, and especially if like you have the initial support, but then you realize that like okay, like this is going to require money. It's going to require long hours. Like you're going to be with the kids by yourself often, and it's like it's literally even though it's something you should pursue, it's still at the end of the day almost a selfish act. Even though you're getting,
Yeah. Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah. I mean, it is a selfish act. And and you have to weigh that against the like idea that when we like create things or making something that
But
maybe
does that give
somebody
you
can
a
like.
fire to make sure that it's not all for nothing?
I mean, yes and no. So I have come full circle on the idea of like artistry and what it means to be a musician or a writer. And when I was younger and when it was the thing that I wanted to make my life into, it was everything had this urgency to it to be something, right? Like it needed to be something. It needed to either be like transcended in some like very artistic way, or it needed to be like commercially viable.
Right.
Like, now it doesn't really need to be that. Like I'm in a pretty good place where I don't need it to be like I'm working a job. Like I'm working a 40-hour a week corporate job as a copywriter. But like that means that if this thing doesn't do anything at all, like I'm making, so I should say that I started making this record at the end of last year. I'm working with the studio called Big Trouble here in Atlanta.
So this is a record you're currently working on?
Yeah. So I started recording in
nice.
December. Started in December. The producer's a guy named TJ Elias. He's incredible. He's like a super, super sharp dude. Like all
Big Trouble in Little 5 Points.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Working with TJ and Dan Gleason, who plays bass in Group Love, and there's all these like really incredible musicians who have like volunteered to step up and work on this project,
man.
which is incredible.
Josh. Yeah.
But like so I'm gonna release this record hopefully at some point this year, if not like very early next year. We'll have to see how it goes. But it doesn't need to be commercially successful. Like if I put it out and no one hears it, like that's kind of just fine. Like
absolutely.
And so like this idea of connecting with people on a deeper level, I love, right? Like I think that like good songwriting does that. Like I think you give a piece of yourself.
Also, I feel like it gets to the point where like what's more important is getting yourself out there. Like whether it connects with somebody or not, it's an outlet that like you don't feel fulfilled unless you get that part of you out there. So whether or not it connects with somebody, whether or not it sells anything, you need to get this out. And I feel like that's what's important about music is like I have this burning inside of me and I don't feel accomplished until I at least get it out there, you know?
Well, I think that's the connection piece, right? Like that's like good art. And that's not just music, but like any good art is like you give a piece of yourself to the thing. Right. And only to the thing, right? Like I'm not doing it I don't have any fans, so I can't be doing it for the fans. And it's like, if I give enough of myself to this thing and you as a listener, like stumble upon it in some way or somehow, and like maybe there's that piece of you that needs to lock onto that thing, right? Like that's why we connect with like good songs or good good art, if it's movies or if it's like a painting, or a great podcast. If it's like I think it's finding that piece of something that someone's been vulnerable enough to like just give of themselves. And so like
that's what I've always loved about, especially like the genre of music that we're in. You can call it folk, singer-songwriter, Americana, whatever you want. I feel like there's so much like personal connection in that style of music that's always drawn me to it, which I really appreciate and love.
I think there's just like, if you make songwriting personal, I think that it becomes universal in a weird way, like because those like minutia, those little moments that can only belong to you. Like,
but I also feel like you can pick up on it too. Like you can tell when a singer's not being genuine. You can tell when they're singing about when they're just trying to make a buck, this, that, and the other. Like I personally need music that resonates. Like, of course, pop music is fun. The radio has fun songs to sing and dance to, but those songs don't mean anything to me. They just exist, you know, like I need to relate to the person I'm listening to actually give a shit about giving them money, going to see them, buying their merchandise, this, that, and the other. Like I'm never going to buy a Sabrina Carpenter shirt, but when she comes on the radio, I'm going to sing along to every word because it's fun, you know?
Yeah. Tell me you wouldn't. Yes, you would. Don't even lie.
I mean, I would
if the merch is good,
but I'm not going to buy it. No.
If the merch is good enough, I might buy it. I'm not buying a ticket to see your show. And it's not that I don't think you should put on a great show.
You should try to get a record with Insane Clown Posse done.
I should, yeah. I should. They might be into. They seem like the kind of dudes that might be into it.
All right. So I've heard Violent J say that he loves grunge, and you're a Bush guy, so you know you've already connected right there.
I found out yesterday that a guy, I won't say a friend because he's just kind of a guy I know, but is going on tour with Bush like
Oh,
next year.
wow. Okay,
And
so they
again,
keep
like
coming back.
not a
They
big,
keep
it's
reintroducing themselves into your life somehow.
constant in my life. Somehow, and I truly could not name, other than those two Bush songs I mentioned at the top of this interview, could not name any other Bush
Yeah,
songs.
I don't know the name of any of their albums either. Like, I don't know a single Bush album by name.
I
Well,
do
here
know that
we're gonna put this out there. Hey, Gavin Rossdale, when and if you're listening to this
yeah,
podcast, holler at your boy Josh Fletcher. Come
Yeah.
on, man.
yeah.
What
Tell
are
me
you
the names
doing?
of some of your other songs.
Yeah.
Come on,
Take
man.
me.
Let's
Actually,
do it, man.
I don't want to go on tour anymore, so don't take me on tour with you. But let me open for you in Atlanta.
But yeah, man, I think it's great. I love, like, I've known you for a very long time, and it's great to see that you're getting back into this. It's hard to imagine you not making music at some capacity, so I'm very glad that you found your way back into this. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to plug? Anything you got coming soon? Any way people can find you and hear your music?
Well, I mean, depending on when this thing comes out, I'm playing at Eddie's Attic on February the 5th. I was
Which I
supposed to
meant to
play
touch
last week,
on.
but I got shut out.
So are you officially the only artist who has had 2 snowed out dates at Eddie's Attic?
I don't know of any other artist that has ever been snowed out of Eddie's twice, but I have. So I think I'm going to claim that I'm the only one.
Okay.
So
Number
I'm
one.
making a little bit of history.
And these
But
last
the
2 dates, were they exactly a year apart?
no. The first one was like 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Do you remember? I mean, you remember like the Snowmageddon stuff.
Yeah. So was that the first one?
Yeah, I was supposed to play Eddie's Attic that weekend.
Oh my God.
I was living in Nashville, and I was supposed to do a show at Eddie's with my friend Alex, the guy that I made the record with in LA. I was so excited. It was going to be such a cool show. And he called me the morning of, and he's like, I'm supposed to fly into Atlanta today, and it's going to snow, and the governor's declared a state of emergency. Like, I can't fly into Atlanta
Yep.
and and do this. I was like, no,
Couldn't
it's
do
gonna be
anything.
fine. It's gonna be
People
fine.
were giving birth on the highways. People were stuck there for days. Like, it was a fucking mess, bro.
Yeah,
That was
I had a
wild.
friend who was on I think he was on I-75 for like 13 hours.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. It took me I worked at Corner Tavern on Edgewood, and I lived in East Atlanta. So it was only like 7 miles away from, maybe 10 miles at the most. It took me 2.5 hours to get home that day.
It
Yeah.
sucks. When I was sound checking at Eddie's the other night, so we were supposed to do the late show, and so we were supposed to sound check at like 2 p.m. and I was over there. I loaded in my stuff. I did my sound check. It was like 2:30, 3 o'clock. My wife texted me like, "Hey, it's starting to snow." Like, "Hey, it's starting to stick."
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, "Do you have a plan? Do you know how to get home?" And so
Leave
when I
now.
when I finally got out of there, I was just in time.
Yeah.
And I hit I-20, and I was like, oh, I see why this is a problem, because it was just like cars everywhere, snow everywhere. I'm very thankful that
Because
I got
without
home
fail,
when I
it's
did.
gonna happen. We're just not equipped for that. And like, people from up north and stuff don't understand. Like, it happens so irregularly here that like we can't, like, the city of Atlanta cannot budget having these snow plows and salt trucks to only be used
No
every
one's
5
used to it
years.
either.
You know,
No one's used to
so
it.
like, if it only happens every 5 years, we can't afford the equipment to like take care of this. So that's why when it happens, it's like, dude, stay the fuck home. Like, don't go anywhere. Leave work.
and
Get
even,
fired.
like-
I don't give a fuck.
Like, being in Atlanta is even like kind of a blessing. Like, I talked to a guy in Savannah this morning, and he's like, yeah, the airport's not even, because they got hit a
Yeah.
couple days ago with this other snowstorm that came through. He's like, the airport's still closed.
Yeah.
Like, it's been 3 days. The
Dude,
airport's still
Louisiana,
closed.
I mean, New Orleans got like 8 or 9 inches of snow. It's fucking wild,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, you think about like Savannah or Valdosta or like those
Yeah.
towns. I think
Yeah.
Pensacola, Florida got like 7 inches.
Pensacola,
of snow.
Florida got a shitload of snow too. Like, when's the last time you ever heard of that happening, you know?
God.
But
Oof.
yeah.
No,
So
thank you.
where can everybody find you, man?
Ooh, I'm on the internet.
All right.
If you want to listen to my music, it's there. Joshua Fletcher is my name. I'm on all of the streaming services. JoshuaFletchermusic.com is my website that I don't update anymore, because we're out of the website updating stage of our lives. I'm on
Do
social
people even
media.
have
but I don't
websites
really
like
use
our
it.
website? Or like, what do people even like have an actual website for anymore?
Merch?
Yeah,
merch. Yeah.
that's it. That's it.
It's a place to
Tour
park
dates?
it's a place to park your tour dates. And so
Okay.
I don't do anything with my website, but I have this like widget that updates automatically that populates my like show page on my website.
Okay.
Nice.
So that's the one thing that does get updated is like if I have a show, it'll be on my website.
Okay.
And you can listen to my whole last record there.
All right. Hell yeah, man. All right. Well, we're gonna let you out of here. Thank you so much for doing that, man. Meant a lot to me. This has strangely turned into Joey interviewing his lifelong friends, but as of now, I wouldn't have it any other way, man. It's great, dude.
Yeah, it's just fun, man. Have me on anytime.
All right, dude. I'll hold you to it because football season's not too far from now, and that guy doesn't know anything about football, so
we can talk about how bad Georgia Tech's doing.
We can talk about that. We can talk about how bad the Falcons are probably going to do again, So we'll get there, man. But it was always nice hearing from you, man. And I'll talk to you later, brother. Thank you so much.
Good to talk to you, man. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah.
Thanks
absolutely.
again, dude.
All right. Well, that'll wrap it up. Thanks, Josh, for coming on here. That was a lot of fun. But that's it for today. So we'll see you guys next time. Ian, you got anything to plug for us?
Yeah, make sure everybody to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X. It's This, That, and the Other with Joey and Ian. Also, make sure you search that whenever you search for whatever you stream on, whether it be Apple Podcasts, whether it be Spotify. Make sure you search for This, That, and the Other with Joey and Ian. Again, thank you, everybody, for listening. We can't wait for the next one. We hope you feel the same. Take care, everybody.
All right, let's go play some Mario Kart on Super Nintendo, bro.